Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Cold one out there, isn't it? Yeah, out there. My wife is out and about today, scraping the car at dawn. I was this morning. Bloody scraping a car, and I wasn't even going anywhere. Seems a little harsh, doesn't it? How is everyone doing? You're all looking absolutely gorgeous, as you always do. Loads and loads of stuff to get through. I actually had a complete rethink. If you were here at the tail end of yesterday's show, you will know that Andy Thornton was talking about this crane report into suicide in the UK construction industry. And I sat down and I wrote a long piece about it and then thought, nah. So I've parked that. I may go back to it at some point in the not too distant future, but today we're going to be talking about basically what a toxic year 2025 has been. I'll get into it in the morning monologue a bit later in the show, but I can tell you that insolvencies in the demolition and construction industry are down by 8% on last year. Before you get too excited and carried away with that, last year was a record high. So we're down, but we're not down much. And we're still losing companies at a faster rate than we were back in the height of COVID. It's tough out there. And Warwick Ward is just the latest example. And oddly enough, I don't claim to have any great foresight in these things, but interestingly, I think both of the Construction Inquirer and Construction Index are covering the debacle at Warwick Ward today. I think we covered it 2 days ago. Do try to keep up, folks, would you? There's work to be had here. How is everyone doing this fine day? Heard on the WhatsApp group that Mr. Cullen, who is about to finish the current project that he's on, and he's going to be working. He's going to be working in Plymouth. Plymouth may as well be overseas. It's bloody miles away. Good morning to Grover Piling. Andy Dalville has been talking about piling a lot on the WhatsApp group. Grover Piling are now in the Instagram as well. Killer Carpentry. I'm not sure that's a good name or not, but Killer Carpentry just joined us over on Instagram as well. Good morning to you. I will look you up after the show, find out what. I mean, I'm assuming you do carpentry, but why is your carpentry killer? We'll find out. As I say, loads and loads of stuff to get through today. I tell you what did go down well, I have to say. The publication, I don't think it's big enough to qualify as a book, but the potted history of Hymac flying off the shelves. Ken Hatcher, I haven't seen him in the chat yet, but Ken's idea was to actually do that review yesterday, the potted history of Hymac. Well, it turns out he was not alone in trying to find out more about the once mighty Hymac, because those books, I use the terms loosely, those books are flying off the shelves. Got rid of loads of those yesterday, mainly because they're free, one would assume, but you never know. Dan Cullen has just arrived and he's packing his bags for Plymouth. Yeah, I mean, Plymouth in the summer, yeah. Plymouth in the winter, not so sure. Anyway, people, without further ado, I'm going to roll the intro and get this show on. No, hang on a minute, before we go any further. Neil Bruce is back. For those of you that don't remember, Neil is based down in New Zealand. Neil, where have you been? I've got to be honest, the show has not been the same without you. It's kind of been on a hiatus. We've been treading water in your absence. Where have you been? What have you done? What have you accomplished? Who have you upset? We need to know all these things. Dan says, I'll be sure. Morning. How's everyone this fine Friday? Well, glad it's Friday. Do feel like the year is rapidly running out. I've done this review of the year in terms of company insolvencies, which is the morning monologue today. But today is 20 days until Christmas. 20 days until Christmas. Who knew? Gary Muirhead, did Neil receive his prize? Good question. Did he? I don't know. Welcome, Neil. You've been a stranger. You have, but it's good to have you back in our midst. Welcome back, sir. Let's crack on, shall we? Without further ado, I'm going to roll the intro and get this show on the road. I will go through the show in just a moment, but I've had to go on Amazon this morning. Something I do with increasing regularity, sadly. I don't know if you know, but I've got headphones in. They're kind of plugged into my ears. And I bought a pair of these in December 2020. The ones I've got in my ears, December 2020. I've worn them out. All the wires started to fray. So I had to buy myself a new. I guess they're probably not designed for daily live streaming. I probably use my headphones or my in-ear monitors way more than most people. So yeah, and do you know how much they've cost me? Oh, painful it was. £19.99. Extortionate. Anyway, it is Friday, the 5th of December. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming and the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, we're walking around Volvo's new A40 Arctic, Hyundai Loader's massive production in Massachusetts, Develon scales the virtual wall, and we're going to take Zoomlion's latest skid steer for a spin. Plus, in my morning monologue today, a truly toxic year. And you'll find out why I'm saying it's toxic in just a moment. Well, not just a moment, a little bit time. Let's have a look. Ken Hatter is here. And Ken, that blue face that you've put on the screen there, that's how I felt scraping the car this morning. Andy Thornton. Good Lord, Andy Thornton, whose middle name is Tardy. He's here on time today. Fantastic. Good to see you. I wear out my earphones within 3 months. Good Lord. I've had the same set of AirPods. They're not on my desk. I've had the same set of AirPods for ages now. My YouTube Christmas address and my first outing, the first outing of my voice, almost a dead cert, as I'm currently on 489 subscribers and gain 1 or 2 a day. Not looking forward to it. You might not be, Jim, but I am. I am looking forward to it. Listen, 500 subscribers is a major achievement. A lot of people don't achieve that. It is a matter of consistency and perseverance, which we've discussed before. But that's fantastic news, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. But make a nice change from my pie hole flapping in the breeze. Your show starts an hour later, so I'm along in bed. Sorry, Friday night. I'm here up late. Well, Neil, let me try to entertain you for your Friday evening. But I promised myself I would speak on camera if I ever hit 500. You wouldn't know this. You wouldn't know this, obviously, because it kind of came out of left field. Obviously, the very reason that I decided to go and do live streaming was because I couldn't produce the magazine that I owned. That was the thing. But for years, I've done public speaking, but I've always avoided it if I could. Never been one to be in front of the camera if I could help it. Not my thing at all. Needs must. And I have to say that for the first probably 6 months, hated it, dreaded it, would listen back to my own voice and think, well, that sounds bloody awful. And now I don't care so much. You kind of ease into it, I guess. Sorry, my phone's just going berserk. Gary, just shows you, Jim, there is definitely a need for a YouTube channel like yours. Yeah, there's a YouTube channel I follow called Think Media. It's American, based out of Las Vegas, I think. And one of the guys there, on a regular basis says, is it too late to start a YouTube channel? And his answer is always, always, always no. The long and the short of it is that whatever you've got to say, the chances are somebody has said it before. But why there is still a gap in the market is because nobody said it in your voice, from your perspective, or based on your personal experience. So, Jim, yes, you might be talking diggers, old diggers, new diggers, all diggers in between, but nobody has said it like you will. That's the key, and you will find an audience. There's probably not a niche that isn't covered by a YouTube channel at some point. So I'm looking forward to it enormously. Chris Ford says, "Is it cold, Mark?" Put the hat on to go and scrape my wife's car. Kept it on because hair's a bit of what little hair I've got left, bit of a mess this morning. So I've stuck with the hat. But no, it was bloody freezing out there this morning. And Mick Norton is in our midst. Good morning to you, Mick. Thank you for being here. Should we crack on? I think we probably should. Let's have, I tell you what, we'll have a smidgen of Caterpillar, and then we'll switch over to Volvo. Neil Bruce has just said, nothing in the mail yet. I really need it because I have a bald head and I'm getting burnt at work. It went off weeks ago. Although I have to say, I don't have a particularly, I'm sure I've mentioned this before, I don't have a good track record sending stuff to New Zealand. We had a prize winner once who won, among other things, a plastic Liebherr cup. It cost me about 25 quid to send it to New Zealand. Never arrived. Just never pitched up. Don't know. Jim says, I hate my voice. It's not the accent. Accents are what helps to define us. Yeah, I totally agree. But my actual voice is terrible. I didn't think so. One of the things I think that I've quite enjoyed, I think to begin with, it was a little bit forced. You know how the BBC used to be very Queen's English. Good evening. We are broadcasting from but they switched it out, and they now, regional accents are perfectly acceptable. As I say, when it first started, particularly when the BBC first moved up to Salford, I got the impression is, by it, we need some of them Northerners on here. I can't do the impression. But now, I listen to the TV, whether it's a news program or anything else, they sound like people. They don't sound like automatons, which I think is a good thing. They want me back working. Goodbye, says Ken Hatcher. Well, he was here for a little while, and while it lasted, it was remarkable, but he's gone again. Do your employers and your colleagues not understand what happens between 10 and 11? Clearly not. Volvo, they have the new version of the A40 articulated hauler, and we're going to get a bit of a walk around like this.
Meet the all-new Volvo articulated haulers, a machine designed to take on your most challenging environments, where productivity, safety, and durability come first. With 39 metric ton of payload capacity, the A40 is powered by the proven D13 engine that delivers 350 kilowatts of power and exceptional torque at low RPM for optimal performance and efficiency. Up front, you will notice the bold new design, a completely new cabin engineered with safety and visibility at its core. The machine features full LED lighting all around, providing brighter, long-lasting illumination from every angle. LED lights not only improve visibility, but last much longer than halogen types, helping reducing maintenance and replacement costs over time. Clear visibility for operators, day and night. Access is safer too, with wider walkways, anti-slip plates, and handrails surrounding the entire platform. The new door location is also redesigned with operator safety in mind. All models now have a longer wheelbase, giving the machine more stability, especially when dumping material. With powerful performance, advanced safety, and modern design, the new generation Volvo A40 delivers reliability that lasts, while reducing operating costs to our customers.
Pretty smart truck. It is still the benchmark, I would say. Gary Muirhead says, we've got them up here and the new A45. How are they bedding in, Gary? That's what we'd like to know. I know you're a bit of a Volvo fan anyway, but what are the chaps saying about the new A40 and A45? Love to hear from you. Stand by your beds, people, because a model human, you'll see what I mean. Gaz Evans, haven't seen you for ages, Gaz, and I'm not surprised. I follow Gaz over on LinkedIn. Gaz, as you probably all aware, makes models of diggers, and particularly demolition machines, and particularly demolition machines with attachments. Probably the unquestionable master of his craft. But man alive, you produce a lot. I genuinely don't know how you keep up with the demand. He put a post on LinkedIn, I'm going to say it maybe a week or two ago, where he'd taken delivery of the base models that he was about to modify with attachments and everything else. And we're talking like pallet loads. Gaz, I can't really tip one of these hats, but I tip my hat to you because astonishing. Must be a hive of activity down your way. Chris Ford said, that's interesting. Started on the phone, then moved on to the tablet, and now seen the cat hammer twice, both on YouTube. That's weird. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there was a bit of a lag between platforms. You know, if you're on Facebook, you're probably a little bit behind YouTube and so on. But I wouldn't have expected it to be device-led. That makes no sense at all. Mick Knott says, tremendous advancement in design for Volvo ADTs. Yeah, they are. As I say, you don't remain the world leader in a particular branch of equipment without constantly pushing the envelope, I guess. And Volvo most certainly do that. What do we have next? Oh yeah, we're doing Hyundai in just a moment. In actual fact, I think we're off to the US of A. We're off to Massachusetts. Back after.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure this show has ever called in on Massachusetts before. May have done, can't remember. But we're going to do that right now. Here we go.
It's been very reliable. Whatever it is that we have to deal with around here on a day-to-day basis and for however long we do it. Gives me all the power that I need. Couldn't have asked for a better machine. SM LaRusso has 3 quarries around Massachusetts, one in Rentham and one in Walpole and West Roxbury. On a normal day, I'll be in the loader for about 10 hours a day. When it comes to the 985, it makes life so much easier digging into piles, loading trucks, even bigger stone when we have to move it for a blast. Sitting in the Hyundai loader for the 10 hours with the AAV, the all-around view, perfect for when I'm backing up. I'm in tight spaces, and there's trucks going back and forth too behind me. Makes it so much easier. The idle time's perfect, allows me to back up and forward when loading trucks. Serviceability is great. Come in the morning, do my walk around. Just all I gotta do is flip the switch and the hood rises up easily and you have access to everything you could need. The Hyundai HL 985 is an extremely reliable machine for us. It deals with all the dust, it deals with all the grime, the water. Me personally, I really enjoy it.
Gary Muirhead, showing his age. Is anybody else hearing the Bee Gees song in their head now? I had to look at that twice. It was like, Bee Gees song? Yes, the Bee Gees did. That would have been, what, the 60s? They did a song called Massachusetts. They did. They absolutely did. Took me a while to remember, but they did. Garvin at Mostly Diggers has just joined us. And Maleke Doedo, I think, has just joined us from somewhere that speaks Portuguese. So, bom dia. Are you in Portugal? Are you in Brazil? One way or another, bom dia. Good of you to join us. Chris Ford says he solved the issue, turned the phone off. It's often the way. Jim says, I think I passed Gaz's stand at Newark the other week, meant to nip back for a look, and then ran out of time. You've missed a treat. You've missed a treat. The intricate details that Mr. Evans manages to put into these things it's incredible. Several times now, I've almost put my hand in my pocket and bought one because I do have a backdrop. I'm not entirely sure where I'd put the damn thing, but I never do. I probably, Gaz, I apologise for that. I probably need to. Andy Thornton, we were talking about accents earlier. And he says, my dad was South African, mum was from deepest Surrey. As a kid, I had a strong English accent with the way South Africans say each word. I sounded like the royal family. Not good when you live in Essex. Yeah, it's an entirely different language down in Essex, isn't it? Let's crack on. We've got, what have we got? Oh, yeah, we're talking tech with Develon in a moment. Back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Ever heard of a virtual wall? I hadn't till I saw this.
Smart AVM and radar sensors are an AI advanced safety system that provides real-time 360-degree monitoring of machinery surroundings. It uses 6 cameras and 3 radar sensors to help operators accurately perceive their environment. With 7 different viewing modes, operators can freely monitor the front, rear, left, and right, effectively eliminating blind spots. Work sites always pose risks of accidents. Collisions with equipment and structures are dangerous, but the most critical accidents involve human lives. In complex work sites, operators cannot always keep track of their coworkers' locations. Smart AVM and radar sensor prioritizes human detection, highlighting individuals on screen to promote immediate awareness. Additionally, if a potential collision is detected within 6 meters, the human detection system is triggered to prompt immediate visual or audible alerts. Now, Smart AVM and radar sensor is with you, supporting safety for everyone, even in blind spots. Virtual wall is a technology that creates a virtual boundary in all directions, front, rear, left, right, above, and below, to restrict equipment movement. It prevents equipment from approaching hazards such as overhead power lines, side structures, and underground areas. With a simple touch on the monitor, operators can effortlessly set up the virtual wall. Once the virtual wall is set, even when operating the boom and arm, the restricted area remains off limits, resulting in a substantial reduction in accident rates. Advanced Lift Assist continuously analyzes real-time load distribution when lifting heavy objects and warns operators of potential rollover risks. If an imminent rollover risk is detected, the warning indicator turns red, promoting immediate operator awareness. Work sites are not always on flat ground. In environments where heavy objects are handled, especially when working on slopes, losing balance can lead to serious accidents. Advanced Lift Assist visually displays precise weight data and risk levels, allowing operators to monitor safety in real time and take immediate action. Develon's innovative technology enhances both operator safety and efficiency, subsequently transforming the work environment into both an efficient and safer one. With Develon, achieve the next safety in your job site.
Some smart tech there. Very impressive. Very impressive. Andy Thornton apparently had heard of virtual walls because he had a robot vacuum cleaner. I've watched those from afar. I must admit, I was more impressed with the robot lawnmowers. I think they do look fantastic. Sure, my dog would destroy one, but yeah. Gaz Evans is off to ConExpo, apparently. Thanks to the kind words. Hope to see some of you at ConExpo. You will certainly see me, Gaz. I will be there. My son Fred will be there. My other half will be there. There's every possibility that, but my twins will be there as well. My daughter came with us last time we went to ConExpo, and my son is now making noises about coming along as well. So keep an eye out for that. Not that you'll ever see them, but just saying. Going off at another tangent, Gary Muirhead mentioned Massachusetts and mentioned the Bee Gees. Jim says, yes, and I remember Kenny Everett being the Bee Gees taking the mick out of their song titles and teeth with Mass of Two Sets. I used to really, really like Kenny Everett, mainly for hot gossip, if I'm being completely honest, but he would never be allowed on TV today, would he? Does anyone remember the American? Well, before we get to that, for those of you who don't know, Kenny Everett was a radio DJ who had a TV show and so on down the line. Yeah, listen, all that stuff. He was very, very good on TV, very funny, very insightful and everything else. But one of the things that I always amused me about him was he had a beard, and it didn't matter what character he was playing, the beard stayed. And he used to play a character like an over the top American actress, and she went by the name of Cunning Stunt. Think about that. Yeah, Cunning Stunt. Well done, Kenny Everett. We miss you enormously. It was Massive Chew Sets. Yes, that would make more sense. Jim apparently says, I'm going to Conexpo 2 if my numbers get picked. Yeah. It's unfortunately it is not a cheap one. It's worth it. Absolutely worth it. There you are. Yes, but it was all done in the best possible taste. It was a simpler time, wasn't it? We have one more film for you, but first we need her to do her thing.
Visit buymeacoffee.com/demolition news/extras. It will put a smile on your face.
Yes, still not entirely convinced by her, but the bookstore is going great guns. I have to say, we've sold 2 copies of that Hymac. I say sold, they're free of charge, but we've got rid of 2 of the copies of the Hymac Potted History since I started the show this morning. So they are still going out the door. If you'd like to grab one of those, you can go and have a look. Garvin, Mostly Digger, says, Jesus, that woke me up. Yes, it does have that effect. Better than a shot of espresso, I would say. Yeah, listen. It doesn't sit well with me. Garvin, if you haven't seen that before, which clearly you haven't, all I would say is that was not of my making. I asked an online system to produce me a woman. That was the woman they produced. Neil Bruce says, "Can you start your show an hour earlier, just for me?" No, no, I can't. I'm barely ready for the show when it starts, to be perfectly honest with you. Have a bouncy Christmas, yes, indeed. Zoomlion, yes, we've got one final film. It's only 51 seconds long, and then we'll get into the morning monologue and the chat that will unquestionably arise from that. This is the latest word in skid steer loaders from those fine folks at Zoomlion. Skid steer's a skid steer, I guess, but I quite like the colour, nothing else. Anyway, people, that's about it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, then please do stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very soon. Have a great weekend. I'll be back here on Monday at 10 a.m. as per usual. But if you do have the time and the inclination and you want to feel really bad about the world of construction, stick around because I'll be back after this. I will start the morning monologue in just a moment. But this is just another reason why I'm looking forward to Jim Turner's first public appearance as a YouTuber. He says, "You'll tell us any old pony, Mark. Bet you typed in bang tidy bint in sexy bins with smashing tits." Almost all of that are words that have never, ever come out of my mouth. I promise you, you can blame the system grok. That's what did it. I can only apologise, but no, that wasn't me. Bang tidy bint, as if I'd say something like that. And Neil Bruce saying, "Laters, guys. Good catching up again. Great to see you, Neil. Thank you very much indeed for joining us." So it is morning monologue. That's not a good start. It's morning monologue time. Okay, I have good news and I have bad news. And since it's Friday, I'm going to start with the good news. Construction company insolvencies were down 8% on the previous year to the end of 2025. That, unfortunately, is where the good news ends. We held on to the title that nobody wants. Construction was still the industry with the highest number of company failures in the whole of the UK. And that should probably tell you something deep and troubling that is wrong with how our sector is structured. And if you think a reduction in insolvencies was perhaps a good sign, keep this in mind. The latest figures are just 8% down on a record high. And wait until you hear the reason behind many of them. Because in 2025, things got a whole lot nastier and more toxic. Company failures stopped being controlled and voluntary and started being forced. In 2024, a lot of companies simply closed their doors when things got too tough. Voluntary closures. In 2025, we saw a massive surge in compulsory liquidations. That's when a creditor, a bank, a big supplier, or often the taxman just gets sick of waiting, goes to court, and forces the company to shut down. That kind of forced failure went up sharply. In September 2025, compulsory liquidations were 17% higher than they were the year before. Creditors, it appears, have run out of patience. They've stopped being flexible and they've decided to enforce the debt aggressively. That signals that cash is desperately tight across the supply chain, and many people are just turning punitive. This means the crisis transformed from a high-volume, company-led winding down into an aggressive environment ruled by creditor demands. It's not just happening here either. It looks like HMRC's strategy to recover debts that built up during the pandemic is a key reason behind the rising number of companies being shut down by the courts. Why did this financial stress get so severe? Mainly because companies were facing a triple squeeze, 3 huge financial pressures hitting them all at the same time. Firstly, money was expensive because of the high cost of borrowing. For construction firms, especially the smaller ones, you often need credit or an overdraft to bridge the gap between paying your lads and getting paid by the client. And when interest when interest rates are high, that gap becomes a crippling cash flow crunch. Borrowing to keep the wheels turning transformed a temporary liquidity problem into a terminal insolvency event. Secondly, while the cost of materials and fuel eased a bit, the price of employing good people shot up in a wage war. We're seeing massive infrastructure projects needing bodies, and a lot of the experienced workforce is retiring. That shortage means competition for skilled labour is fierce, driving up wages. If a business was locked into a legacy long-term fixed price contract, they couldn't pass those new higher labour costs onto the client, and that created an unsustainable squeeze on their cash flow. And the final blow was a collapse in demand. Late in 2025, the demand for new projects fell off a cliff. The UK Construction Purchasing Managers Index, or the PMI, plummeted to 39.4 in November 2025. That might not mean too much to you, but if the number is below 50, it means the sector is shrinking. And at 39.4, it represented the sharpest downturn since the original COVID-19 lockdown 5.5 years ago. Housing and civil engineering jobs were hit especially hard, and that meant firms that managed to survive the high costs of the previous years now face a terminal threat. They've got nothing left in the pipeline to bid on or to build. The crisis is disproportionately hitting the backbone of our industry, the subcontractors and the specialist trade base. Detailed analysis shows that over 97% of all corporate insolvencies nationally were companies with annual turnovers below £1 million. If you're a specialist trade firm, you're working on razor-thin margins, and you're the ones who feel the pain first. The chronic problem of late payment remained acute. Subcontractors often fund several months of labour and materials before they get paid. In a high-interest environment, having to wait 6 months for payment, then bridging that gap with expensive loans is what turns a thriving business into a failure. It wasn't just old debts and high costs killing business either. New regulations and legal fights also delivered swift and fatal blows. The Building Safety Act introduced to fix historical fire safety and cladding issues imposed massive new compliance costs. For big contractors, that meant historical hidden defects suddenly became catastrophic, immediate financial liabilities. The collapse of Ardmore Construction in 2025 was explicitly linked to insurmountable cladding liabilities and regulatory changes. Perhaps the most aggressive failure mechanism, however, was litigation and adjudication. When cash is tight, subcontractors use legal tools to demand quick payment. Adjudication rulings are immediate and legally enforceable, meaning the judgment can instantly trigger the compulsory liquidation of the main contractor. This shows the chronic problem of late payment is now directly linked to rapid, legally enforced failure. The failures of contractors also cause problems for equipment suppliers because builders were short of cash and lacked confidence. They focused on renting equipment rather than buying it. For the industry as a whole, what's clear is that the fundamental problem of chronic late payment must be solved to stabilise the subcontractor base. The final lesson of 2025 was that resilience is no longer enough. Firms had to be aggressive about managing costs, chasing every single penny and knowing their legal exposure. The market is not waiting for anyone to catch up. If a firm slips on its finances, someone, likely the taxman, is just itching to pull the trigger on the business. Now, there's a lot to unpack there, and I will go over to the chat in just a moment, but just a couple of bits that stood out for me. Insolvencies, yes, they were down on last year, but last year was a record high, so that obviously is nothing to get excited about. We have politicians talking about investment in construction, investment in infrastructure, and yet at the same time, their attack dogs at HMRC are actively pulling the rug out from firms that are struggling. And also, I realise it's impossible to compare apples with oranges, but the government will quite happily run up a huge loss on a project like HS2, for example, because that's public money. And when I say public money, I mean our money. They'll quite happily bail out a bank or a financial institution, again using your or our money. But God forbid a demolition or construction company finds itself on a sticky wicket. And I guess my final point is this. There is no end in sight for this. 2024 was bad. 2025 is every bit as bad. And nothing that Rachel Reeves said a few weeks ago is likely to fix that anytime soon. We have lost, in the space of 24 months, 8,000 construction companies. Of varying sizes. Some of them would have been 2 or 3 people, perhaps. Some of them would have been hundreds. I mean, Warwick Ward, which is the most recent, is more than 100 people. We are talking about thousands and thousands of people that have been thrown onto the scrap heap. I realise that creditors want their money, and included among those are HMRC, who want their money. But at the point that you are effectively putting people out of work and potentially on unemployment benefit, potentially for a prolonged period, does that actually balance the books? Listen, I tried to find it. I couldn't find it. I don't have the maths in front of me. But if you drive a company under to reclaim 100,000 quid and you end up putting 20 people on the dole for 6 months, is that about the same? I don't actually know how much a dole pays at the moment, to be honest. But is that not roughly the same? Plus the fact that they might find themselves on sort of housing benefit and other benefits to see them through. Now, I'm not saying that the HMRC shouldn't reclaim their money. I'm not saying that contractors, subcontractors, suppliers shouldn't reclaim their money. But I've often, I'm going to go off at tangent and I'll come back. There is a system on some of the social media platforms where if you make a complaint against somebody for something like racism or homophobia or whatever, what we loosely term these days as hate speech, somebody can log a complaint with the owners of Twitter. Not so much with Twitter, because I think they actually encourage racism, but Facebook and places like that, and they will, without any by your leave, without any real investigation, they will close your channel. There has been a spate over the last couple of years of those claims being spurious. This guy is quite clearly a misogynist. This guy is quite clearly a racist. And they shut down the account, and that could quite easily be somebody's livelihood. And because somebody has made a spurious complaint, they've lost their livelihood. I wonder if we are heading towards that now with this. If all it takes is a bit of legal paperwork to say this company owes me money, fold them, and that company is thereby folded, I have a horrible feeling that will have a domino effect to the point where everybody will jump on that bandwagon. Anybody that watches, particularly LinkedIn, I find these days, if you watch LinkedIn with any degree of regularity, you'll see people that are owed money by main contractors, people further up the supply chain, and they're quite public in their criticism of it. If they now decide, rather than bitching and whining about it on LinkedIn, which they're perfectly at liberty to do, they're actually going to take the legal recourse, I think we could be looking at an absolute avalanche of enforced liquidations. Even to the point where, just imagine this conversation. Somebody phones somebody that owes them money. You've owed me 10 grand for 3 months now. Are you going to pay it? Can't pay it at the moment. I'll pay you next week. All right, I'll leave it until next week. Next week rolls around. Where's my money? I'm just waiting for one more payment. Now, as it stands at the moment, right, as it stood up until now, you might be frustrated. You might throw your teddy bear out the pram. You might even take to social media to tell everyone what an arsehole this guy was being. But ultimately, that might get itself resolved. If now you decide to take umbrage at, he promised to pay, he didn't. He promised to pay again, he didn't. Sod it, I'm going legal. And at that point, that company has the rug pulled out from under it, potentially rendering people unemployed, potentially meaning, the business folds entirely, and so on down the line. I think we've left ourselves open to a very, very bad state of affairs. I'm sorry, my phone just buzzed. To tell me another copy of the High Mac book has gone out the door. Yeah, as I say, I worry about that. If we've made it that straightforward, and by the sound of it, the people that are mainly using this is HMRC, but if there is a legal process in place where you can literally trigger a company's enforced liquidation with a bit of fancy schmancy paperwork, I'm not hopeful at all. Not hopeful at all. There's nothing to suggest that the start of next year will be any better than it is this year. So, if we maintain the current record, by the end of 2026, we'll have lost 12,000 companies or thereabouts over the course of 3 years. And I wonder what that balance will look like next year. Up until 2024, almost all of those liquidations were voluntary. We that's it. Game's over. We can't do any more. We're gonna have to fold the business and try to work our way through it. But I think, was it 17% up in September alone on enforced liquidations? I think we're staring down the barrel of something very, very bad indeed. I really do. And I do wonder if in creating a system whereby HMRC can recoup their money more easily, whether we've actually opened a loophole that will allow both scrupulous and unscrupulous folks to use that same legal device to fold companies, for people that owe them money, but also potentially people that have pissed them off over that owed money. I think that's a very, very sad state of affairs. We shall see. We shall see. I'm sure the other publications will start to do their annual reviews. Take them with a pinch of salt, I would suggest, because it's not, if they come at you with all the good news about the state of the industry, and just bear in mind, 2 years, 8,000 companies gone to the wall. And I wonder what that says about the way that this industry actually operates. I mentioned in that spiel about narrow margins. Quite clearly, in many cases, those margins are too narrow. I think in some instances we've only got ourselves to blame, because we do indulge in this race to the bottom, constantly undercutting. Part almost entirely, I think, driven by clients. They want everything for nothing, and thereby we value engineer, and we cut to the point where there's no profit, and if things go awry or you're paid late, there's no fat there to see you through. But I do wonder what it says about the wider industry. If 20 companies folded or were forced into liquidation, you'd go, well, that's that's nature, isn't it? That's the circle of life in business. But 8,000 in 2 years, does that? How many does it take before we go, I think something might be wrong here? I think the system underlying or underpinning the industry might actually be broken. People can't earn enough to keep their businesses open, and if they can't earn enough money to keep their business open, what happens as we slowly lose more and more companies? And I wonder, I've not seen it, but I wonder if anybody has done the math on the ongoing skill shortage in comparison to the collapse of 8,000 companies in 2 years. Because every time a company folds, not only do you have job losses, but you also have another company that is not going to recruit, train, and employ people. We've lost 8,000 potential employers in 2 years. It is a worrying time. It is a worrying time, and I wish I could send you away to 2026 with a spring in your step and a song in your heart, but I'm not seeing. I've literally seen nothing in probably a year that gives me any faith in the short term. And if anybody has, I'd love to hear from you, because as far as I'm concerned, it was tough last year. It was every bit as tough this year, and it's everything I'm seeing. It will be equally tough next year. What I would say is that the chat appears to have stopped. No, it doesn't, because Chris Ford just arrived. A lot of business is done on trust. 98% of people will pay eventually. 1% won't be able to pay because of an unforeseen occurrence, and then there's the 1% who deliberately set out to fleece you. Yeah. But I do genuinely get the impression. I remember somebody saying this to me in 2008, 2009, the big recession. You know, I think we're now at the point that even those that don't intend to pay you have stopped ordering. I think that's where we are now. It's it is deeply worrying. It is deeply worrying. And going back to that skill shortage offset against liquidations, I've tried to take a positive view on liquidations in terms of people. I mean, Warwick Ward going, they've got some very knowledgeable, very experienced people who would be of huge, huge benefit to other construction equipment dealers. Whether it's sales staff or mechanical staff, the fitters and everything else like that, they will be of a huge benefit. I'd like to think a lot of those, if not all of them, will find alternative employment within the industry in very short order, and all will be right with the world. But when you're losing 8,000 in 2 years, there are less places for those newly unemployed to go find themselves in alternative employment. And I also wonder about the psychological effect. If you've been unlucky enough to be part of a company, a construction or demolition company that's gone into liquidation once, the chances are you I still enjoyed the industry. I like the people, I like the equipment, I like the banter, and I'm going to stick with it. But if that happens to you twice or 3 times, then surely sooner or later you're going to wake up and go, you know what, demolition and construction, it's just too unpredictable. I can't build a life and a family and a retirement based on I'm working 1 week, I'm not working the next. I can't do that anymore. And we will force people through that to jump ship and go and stack shelves. This is all down to developers' longevity of paying subbies. It doesn't help. It certainly doesn't help. Listen, I do. While I was researching that, I do get the impression it is a bit of a perfect storm. You do have the late payment element. You do have the higher cost of borrowing money to offset that, and you've got a slump in demand as well. I think probably one of those you can withstand, but all 3 at once, that's the 3 straws that break the camel's back, I think. Do you still see a lot of work coming into the demolition industry, as you stated a few weeks ago? I do. I mean, the thing I was talking about a few weeks ago was the large panel system buildings. There's about just shy of 1,000 of those that are likely to come down over the next few years as a result of the Building Safety Act. So there will be work to be had. But that won't be of much help to the smaller end of the business because, it's going to be pretty specialized. I think it will include a lot more companies than perhaps the power station demolition and decommissioning program that we had a few years ago. We are talking potentially employing hundreds of demolition firms, and a tower block demolition, by and large, will be done top down. So they will be, fairly lengthy contracts, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, whatever it might be. So there will be that. But when you think about what demolition actually is, it is a facilitator. It clears the way for something else. And if there isn't a something else to be built, housing in particular, I think that's the biggest concern. When we had Neil Edwards on the show on a regular basis, at one point, house building was responsible or was contributing somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2 of all construction industry demand. That has now largely dried up. So we've lost 1/3 to 1/2 of all demand. And if you don't need to take down a previous block to put a different block or new houses in its place, that block's staying exactly where it is. As I say, the only exception to that is these large panel system buildings, because there are some very serious health and safety concerns revolving around those in relation to the Building Safety Act. I don't think there will be much option with many of those other than to demolish them. So somebody will have to find the money for that somewhere, and so on down the line. But if you are a demolition contractor that traditionally relies upon clearing the way for a housing development, you're probably not doing a great deal at the moment, and there's nothing to suggest you'll be doing a whole lot more in 2026. They're the worst. They never pay on time, and some companies try to keep up with the Joneses too. Yep. Listen, I mean, when I attend, it's mainly IDE meetings these days, but you get to talking to the principals at these demolition contractors, and I've lost count of the number of companies that now just flatly refuse to work with or for a tier 1 contractor, because it's just a thankless and often painless task. They will make you jump through hoops to get the job. They'll make you jump through hoops to complete the job, and then they will make you jump through hoops, possibly for 6 months or more, to get paid for the job. So why would you sign up for that? It's bad. Make no bones about it. I'm sure other publications will try to put a gloss or a positive spin on it, and 8% less insolvencies than last year. It's a record year. Insolvencies were there. 2024, they went to there. They're now there. That's not an improvement. That's just slightly less bad than it was when it was really bad. That's nothing to get all excited about. And on that cheery note, listen, if it means a few more people are going to be at home, I will do my best to keep them entertained. I'd much rather they cook this show on catch up when they'd finish work and earn the money that they so richly deserve. Demolition Jobs is back. We're doing our best to try and put people back into work. Dan Cullen's doing the same with his WhatsApp groups as well. Dan, I think you're in for a whole lot more demand, particularly over the next 4 to 6 weeks. I think Demolition Jobs will be exactly the same. In actual fact, we're in talks at the moment with a recruitment company to really up our game on that, to try and get more people into work as quickly as we possibly can. So I'll keep you posted on that. That's about it for the day. That's about it for the week as well. Dan says, guys, have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe and be happy. Tell your loved ones that you love them. Yeah, do that. Do that. I'll be back on Monday. We've got a full program for you next week, and no days off or anything else to go and do. So we'll have another natter next week. Until then, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you Monday. All the best.